Well, hello there. Thanks for joining us. If you're a Canadian permanent resident or a Canadian citizen and you have parents or grandparents who are currently outside of Canada and are not themselves Canadian permanent residents, then you may be able to get them to Canada quickly so that they can spend time with you and your family using what's known as the super visa for parents and grandparents. We'll be sharing much more on this in this video. Of course, do remember to hit the subscribe button and to check us out on our website at go.gooselaw.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. My name is Donovan Francis and I'm a Canadian immigration lawyer, and I help skilled workers inside Canada and outside Canada to become Canadian permanent residents without having to deal with all of the complicated immigration forms that are part of that process. Now, if you are already in Canada as a permanent resident or as a Canadian citizen, but you want to bring your parents or your grandparents to Canada as quickly as possible, you have the option of using what's known as a super visa for parents and grandparents. Now, ideally, Canadian permanent residents and Canadian citizens would want to sponsor their parents or grandparents. That is, to complete an application as sponsors, thereby allowing their parents or grandparents to themselves become permanent residents. However, for many reasons, that making such an application can be a challenge. For instance, the government has limits on the number of those types of applications that it processes in any given year, and also the processing time can be extensive. And so for persons who want to get their parents and grandparents here right away, a good option is going to be the super visa. And so a super visa pretty much is a visa that would allow the parents or grandparents to come to Canada for up to 2 years at a time. So they'll be able to spend up to 2 years in Canada without having to go back to their home country. And they can do this for a period of time of up to 10 years. So normally somebody who's coming on a regular visa is allowed to stay in Canada for up to 6 months. After which they need to return to their home country or apply for an extension of their status as a visitor. However, for persons who are wanting to come as on the super visa, then they are going to be able to spend up to 2 years in Canada. Now that's significant. If the intention is just to have them coming for just 6 months, then the regular visitor visa is going to be a better option to the super visa. But the super visa is in fact quite a popular option used by Canadian permanent residents and citizens. It's something that we ourselves have processed for some of our clients before. In this instance, we helped this client with a super visa, and this client was happy with the quality of the service that they received. So it's a viable and a good option for persons who are wanting to get their parents and grandparents here quickly. In terms of eligibility, of course, the persons making the applications or the persons in Canada who are wanting to invite the applicants here must themselves be Canadian citizens or permanent residents. So note that the application technically is being made by the parent or grandparent, right? Because they're the ones who are applying for this super visa. However, to be eligible, they must be a parent or grandparent of a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. Okay, that's going to be important. Then there's also a letter that's required and a letter of invitation that's required from your Canadian child or grandchild, and that letter has to be very specific. It has very specific requirements, such as a promise for financial support. It must list the number of persons in the household, and so on and so forth. And so that's something that you definitely will want to pay attention to, or at least get some expert guidance. One of the requirements, another of the requirements, is that you must have medical insurance from a Canadian insurance company, and that's important, which is why it's in bold. It has to be a Canadian insurance company, and this is medical insurance just to ensure that in the event of illness, that your parent or grandparent is able to get good health healthcare. And so the coverage, that is the value of the insurance coverage, should be $100,000 minimum. Okay, that's not how much money you're going to be spending. That's the value of the coverage. Now, in terms of the monthly premium, that's going to vary depending on the insurance company you go with. But in terms of the maximum, or rather the minimum coverage that the policy should have, it should provide for up to $100,000 in coverage. Okay, and of course you'll need to provide proof of that. Applications are made outside Canada. What this means is that the Canadian office that the application is filed through must be an office that is outside Canada. It's not something that can be filed within Canada. Of course, an immigration medical is a requirement, irrespective of what country you're coming from. That's a requirement for the supervisor as well. And of course, there are a few other conditions. Now, when it comes on to financial support, the person who is issuing the invitation, so that is a Canadian permanent resident or the Canadian citizen who is issuing the invitation to the parent or grandparent, that person must provide proof that they have the minimum necessary household income in order to take care of this parent or grandparent when they're in Canada. So there's something called the Low Income Cutoff, or LICO, and LICO pretty much is so the government has what it describes as the minimum required, the minimum necessary household income that a household must have in order to be able to show that they'll be able to take care of this relative when this relative comes. And so if you're a Canadian permanent resident or citizen and you are a one-person household, then you're going to need to show that you have a minimum necessary income of $25,000, and it continues, it increases based on the number of persons in the household. And of course, there are specific rules around calculating the number of persons in the household. For instance, you need to include the applicant, the person who you're inviting, in your count as well. All right. There are specific requirements around photographs as is standard, and so on and so forth. So that's the minimum necessary requirement rule there. And you can find a listing of the types of supporting documents that one may provide in order to show that they meet the minimum necessary income. All right, so bank statements, notice of assessment, or your tax or other tax documents may suffice. Of course, like any other application, this decision to grant or not to grant a supervisor is going to be ultimately up to the discretion of the officer who's assessing the application. Canada's immigration laws allow for immigration officers to use what's called their discretionary power to make decisions, and so ultimately the officer's discretion will play a part in that decision, and that officer is going to be looking at things such as ties to your home country. Do you have property in your home country? Are you likely to return to your home country after after coming on a supervisor? The purpose of your visit, are you coming to look for grandkids, or are you coming to just visit, or whatever the purpose is, that's going to play a part in the officer's decision. And of course, your family's ability to take care of you while you're here is going to be a factor, as to will the overall political situation in your home country. Is the situation there one that suggests that you are unlikely to return should you ever get to Canada? Those are some of the issues that the officer will likely be looking at. And so in a nutshell, there you have it. Just a general overview of the super visa for parents and grandparents of Canadian citizens and permanent residents wanting to come to Canada for a period of time that is longer than 6 months, that is longer than the time that would ordinarily be allowed by a regular visa. I hope you found value from this video, and as always, do remember to hit the subscribe button and to check us out on our website at go.gooselaw.com.